The thing about it, a king don't chase a peasant. King chase kings. I want Joshua.
Down to right forever winning. What up? Let's go, baby! Let's go!
Welcome to the motherfucking relay where we're covering today's top boxing news!
Okay, we'll start with this. Well, I'm sure most of you have heard already that Eddie Hearn and Showtime exec Stephen Espinoza had quite the little Twitter war. A lot of back and forth action. And some of the tweets read, "Contract was sent and Matchroom saw it. Contract said Sky got the UK rights." Eddie Hearn replied with stone cold lies. Stephen Espinoza replied to that with lies. You mean like when you told Klitschko and HBO that AJ didn't have a multi-fight agreement with Showtime, even though there were still 3 fights left in the deal? Experiences like that are why we all keep receipts. I'm sure this excerpt will look familiar to you. Eddie Hearn replied with, "Show the contract you sent." Stephen Espinoza replied to that with, "Never said I sent it. Wilder sent it, and you confirmed the receipt." Hearn told ESPN that he indeed received the offer by email from Wilder's personal account. Eddie Hearn replied with 3 laughing emojis saying, "So now you're saying a personal email from Wilder that was 1 paragraph offering $50 million was a contract? Ha ha ha. Contract was requested and never sent." To which Stephen Espinoza replied, 3 detailed pages, not 1 paragraph. Again, never said I sent a contract, and I'm not going to expose private business arrangements in a Twitter discussion. Considering your attempt to deny AJ's 6-fight Showtime deal after 3 fights, it's not surprising that you wouldn't remember this one either. Eddie Hearn replied to that with, "You aren't going to expose private business arrangements on Twitter, but you don't mind discussing AJ's previous confidential contract. You're a beauty. Anyway, I'm glad we cleared that up. A contract was never sent." To which Stephen Espinoza replied, "Didn't release anything that wasn't already public, other than you failed attempt to ignore the agreement you already entered into. You didn't answer the question. A 3-page contract was sent. You said it wasn't. So what do you call the 3-page document that you received?" To which Eddie Hearn replied, "No, a 3-page contract was never sent. Read my tweets. Not 1 page, 3 pages, or 50 pages. You lost AJ because you ran out of money. You know that. You also don't have one of the top 3 heavyweights under contract. I get you're under pressure, but don't tell porky pies. Have a nice day." To which Stephen Espinoza replied, "LOL, the lies continue. You're quite creative. You don't dispute that you received a 3-page document with deal terms, but you don't consider it a contract. Just like you didn't consider the AJ multi-fight deal a contract until you got legal advice telling you otherwise." To which Hearn replied, "Our contract was honored and then you ran out of money. However, when you tried to approach AJ's trainer on the sly about an extension, it was game over, baby. Connor was right." Stephen Espinoza replied to that with, "Wow, pathological. What a colossal waste of time this has become." Espinoza continued saying, "Ran out of money after the AJ contract finished in March 2018? Another blatant lie. We did 9 more 2018 events after that. Quite a feat to do with no money." To which Hearn replied, "Ref stopped that contest about a half an hour ago, mate." Now, given the varying grotesqueries of this Twitter war, you've got to take your time with this and pay attention to just what exactly is being said. Stephen Espinoza is alleging that he didn't send a contract. He's not saying that he sent a contract. He's saying that Wilder's offer was a contract. A 3-page
Detailed
contract that detailed all the particulars, all the varying grotesqueries. That's what Stephen Espinoza is saying, and yet that doesn't match up with what Shelly Finkel said. If you go back to April of last year, when this whole thing kicked off, Shelly Finkel himself admits that the offer that Deontay Wilder sent via email did not include a contract. That in order for them to receive a contract, in order for Hearn and Joshua to receive a contract, they would first have to accept the offer. I.e., layman's terms, when Wilder sent that initial email to AJ or Hearn or whoever the fuck he sent it to, when he sent it, a contract wasn't attached to it, and Shelly Finkel himself admitted that. So why is Stephen Espinoza here in 2019 alleging that Deontay Wilder's email was a 3-page detailed contract when if you go back in time to see what was being said at the time that email was sent, it's the opposite. Shelly Finkel's own statements from that time blow Stephen Espinoza's current narrative right out of the fucking water. Because here we see that Shelly Finkel is admitting that they didn't send a contract with that email. Which begs the question, what the fuck is Stephen Espinoza talking about?
beats me.
I'll reiterate some points that I've made here and there throughout previous videos since this entire $50 million email offer ensued. The people over there on Team Deontay Wilder can't seem to get their story straight. On one end, Stephen Espinoza outright denied the involvement of Frank Warren and BT Sport.
That money was coming from BT.
He is that's absolutely false.
Okay.
Absolutely false.
You're the first person to say it's false. Other than all the Eddie Hearn
100%.
Why would he say such a thing?
He didn't say that. He didn't say that.
That's what they were doing. They offered the the guarantee of the 50 and the 30 on the strength of buying the rights to put the fight on. Well, that's what they were doing. They offered the the guarantee of the 50 and the 30 on the strength of buying the rights to put the fight on. Now, I'm sure if I'd have been in Hearn's position, I wanted to fight, and I'd say, well, no, it's got to go on Sky. But the fact was, that was the conversations I was having with Shelley. We wanted to get it out. We wanted to put the fight on BT, and we had a lot of conversations about it.
Why would he say such a thing?
He didn't say that. He didn't say that.
There's audio.
In spite of Frank Warren himself going on camera and saying that this $50 million offer to AJ was contingent upon BT Sport buying the rights for the fight. BT Sport, where Anthony Joshua can't even fight. And they know that because they know that he is exclusively contracted to Sky. And at the time they made this offer, he was still under contract to Sky and would be until the fall, whereas all this took place in the spring. Espinoza outright denied Frank Warren's involvement, and yet we saw that Lou DiBella had a different story.
That part of the $50 million offer would be coming from BT Sports.
Yeah, but what's the problem with that? When you're making an offer and you're fighting a British guy, you're going to have somebody as a partner in the UK.
Well, wouldn't that be contract?
I don't have to. If I make a legitimate offer to this is boxing, man. This isn't like proof of funds. I never heard that expression until it came out of Eddie Hearn's mouth.
Dude, don't you see that contradicts? It's like contradicting or a conflict of interest. The fact that BT would be tied to an offer that is for Sky Sports, a fighter that's tied to Sky Sports. That was the follow-up.
It wasn't a fighter for Sky Sports. No, it wasn't.
We saw that Lou DiBella basically confirmed that yes, Frank Warren was involved. We also know that a lot of what Frank Warren said is corroborated by Anthony Joshua himself. Frank Warren alleged that the guarantee was based on BT Sport buying the rights for the fight. That's directly corroborated by Anthony Joshua himself. So those pieces actually fit. Whereas the odd man out in this entire situation does seem to be Stephen Espinoza, who's basically saying that Wilder sent them a contract, even though Shelley Finkel confirms that he didn't, who's basically denying the involvement of Frank Warren and BT Sport, even though Lou DiBella says he was involved, and Anthony Joshua corroborates everything that Frank Warren said, that their offer was contingent on BT Sport buying the rights for the fight. There has to be a reason that out of all the particulars and all the varying fingers that are in this pie, Stephen Espinoza, time and time again, seems to be the odd man out. Seems to be the puzzle piece that doesn't fit. Now, if you want to know why Stephen Espinoza is constantly the odd man out, if you want to know why his account of events doesn't seem to match up with all these things that you can go out there and Google yourself, if you want to know why that is, it's very simple. It's because he's lying, and he's been caught in a lie. I mean, we literally just caught him in a lie right now. Stephen Espinoza alleges that Deontay Wilder's email offer included a 3-page detailed contract. But if you go back to all the articles and the statements from Shelley Finkel himself, he didn't say that that included a contract. He said if you guys want a contract and proof of funds, you gotta agree first. So let's not lose sight of what we're discussing here. We've already mulled over those particulars in previous videos, and I'll leave the links to those videos in the description box. What we're analyzing here is what Stephen Espinoza is saying and if there's any shred of truth in it. And when you do some digging, what you find is that he's very inconsistent. He's the one that's likely lying because what he's saying doesn't match up with anything that's happened so far. I mean, what you guys should have been immediately asking yourselves if you witnessed this Twitter war is why is a Showtime network executive having a Twitter beef with a boxing promoter over a fighter that's not even contracted to his network? That fighter just said not but a few days ago that he is a network free agent and he can fight anywhere, in which case you have to ask, okay, what the fuck is Stephen Espinoza's involvement? You know, what's his role in this? Why is he on Twitter arguing like some kind of adolescent teenager in high school?
Yeah.
And the reason for that is simple. Stephen Espinoza, in many ways, is being cut out of the deal. And in more ways than one. Do realize something. That Stephen Espinoza in regards to Showtime, Stefan Espinoza's role
In this saga.
in all of this is probably the least important role of all, because he doesn't handle Deontay Wilder's career. He's not his promoter. Deontay Wilder himself says that he's a network free agent. Those things in mind, you have to ask, why is Stefan Espinoza so enthralled in these negotiations or potential negotiations or fizzled out negotiations? Why is he so enthralled in this? Why is he so involved? And it's because he's trying to make sure that Showtime gets a piece of the pie. And his problem is that in a lot of ways, he's being cut out of the deal. All this took place in April.
2018.
April of last year, meaning DAZN hadn't debuted here stateside months later till September. What Stefan Espinoza was trying to do, and what he's still trying to do, is make sure that Showtime gets in on that action. That if that fight goes down, Showtime here in the States will show it. That's his role. That's what it's limited to. And that's why many of the puzzle pieces in regards to Stefan Espinoza simply don't fit. A lot of what he's saying doesn't match up with what's already happened, what is already immediately searchable to anyone via the internet. You can go back, you can look up these articles yourself.
You can do it.
That's why what Stefan Espinoza is saying, and in more ways than one, makes absolutely no sense. He's the odd man out. He is the least important cog in the machine that could be Anthony Joshua versus Deontay Wilder. And what he's trying to do here, quite desperately I might add, is validate himself.
And his role.
I mean, ask yourself a question. Do you see a lot of network executives having these kinds of Twitter beefs with boxing promoters? Do you see the execs over there at Fox doing any of this shit? Do you see the execs over there at ESPN doing any of this shit? Do you see the execs over at DAZN doing any of this shit? No, you don't.
No!
This is more characteristic of a fighter. You know, a fighter having a Twitter beef with another fighter, or a boxing promoter having a Twitter beef with another boxing promoter, or a boxing manager having a Twitter beef with another boxing manager. But this is not characteristic of a network executive. And yet, for some reason, Stefan Espinoza has taken it upon himself to be acting promoter of Deontay Wilder. Deontay Wilder, who not but a few days ago said he's a network free agent. Understand that if we're seeing Stefan Espinoza rehatch this conversation that has all but been talked to death, it's because he's got nothing better to do.
Too much free time.
You know, it's bad enough that the Anthony Joshua versus Deontay Wilder negotiations went the way that they did. But to add to the stress that Stefan Espinoza may be facing, he may have also lost the Tyson Fury rematch. He might have lost that one too. Because if that does go down, in all likelihood, it might be on ESPN, who have, you know, deeper pockets and they're a bigger network overall than Showtime. You look at that, you look at the potential that, you know, if this Wilder versus Joshua fight goes down, you know, it might end up on DAZN. And that puts Stefan Espinoza
out in the cold,
in a compromising position to where he's being cut out of several deals, so he's got to try to validate himself. He's got to try to get more involved.
Try to.
And it's really just a pointless redundancy because he's trying to win a battle in the court of public opinion, but the court of public opinion isn't going to help those fights land on your network. The fact of the matter is, the topographical environment here stateside when it comes to networks and boxing promoters, it is changing. And these changes are greatly affecting Showtime. Perhaps back when Manny and Floyd were doing their thing, you know, Showtime was a more pivotal or more of a pillar in the sport of boxing. But these days, when you got Top Rank forming partnerships with powerful networks like ESPN, and you've got PBC taking their business to a bigger network than yours, Fox, they're dividing content between you and them. But it just so happens that since Fox is a bigger network,
and Showtime,
a lot of their more prominent fighters are going to be fighting there, lest we forget. Fox's deal with the PBC was contingent on them getting the Mikey Garcia versus Errol Spence fight, which undoubtedly would have been on Showtime had PBC not formed that deal with Fox, thereby putting Showtime and what they need on the back burner. And Stefan Espinoza with it. We see what DAZN's got going on. You guys can sit there and criticize DAZN as much as you want. When Canelo fights Daniel Jacobs, when Anthony Joshua fights Jarrell Miller, I've no doubts that that's going to turn over quite a few subscribers. Those fights in it of themselves, devoid of all the other content that you get from downloading that app. The topographical environment of boxing is changing, and it's not to the benefit of Stefan Espinoza. And that's why he's left with no choice but to try to rehatch an argument that has all but been dispelled and put to bed. I mean, even Deontay Wilder himself doesn't spend as much time as he used to arguing about the Anthony Joshua fight. And yet, Stefan Espinoza, for him, he's got more than enough time to sit there on Twitter arguing like a teenage schoolgirl because he knows
Needs that fight.
that Showtime really needed that fight. They needed that fight to land on their network. And as it stands today, given everything that's going on, he still needs that fight to be on his network. Because if Showtime can't get those kinds of fights, where does that leave them in the sport of boxing? And where would that leave Stephen Espinoza? It's conceivable that if things don't pick up, well, Showtime could go the route when it comes to boxing that HBO went. I mean, this is why people were saying this. They were watching the different partnerships that were forming a few months ago, and they made the deduction that, if these bigger networks and all this different stuff is going on, and all these big networks are getting involved, it's going to be hard for a smaller network like Showtime to keep up with them. And in that way, that's why people were saying that Showtime might go the route that HBO went. I mean, you guys saw the numbers for the Gervonta Davis versus Hugo Ruiz fight, right? This guy who's supposedly a star. You saw what the ratings were for that fight, right?
Underwhelming.
Back to my original point. Stephen Espinoza is reduced to arguing on Twitter and lying about the particulars of a subject that is all but dead. You say Deontay Wilder sent a 3-page detailed contract in his email, and yet when we go back in time, that's not the case. That's not what happened, and that's not what Shelley Finkel said. You say that Frank Warren didn't say what he said, and that he wasn't involved, and the money, the guarantee for the $50 million, it wasn't coming from BT. Well, that's not what Lou DiBella said, that's not what Frank Warren said, and that's not what Anthony Joshua said. The only puzzle piece that doesn't fit, the only one who seems to keep getting caught in lies, is Stephen Espinoza. And this is just another chapter in that saga of a guy who is becoming desperate because he's being left out of the loop, he's being left out in the cold, and he's being cut out of the deal. While Eddie Hearn's story really hasn't changed. He's been consistently saying that they never got to a contract, and they never even got as far as verifying whether or not those funds were real. You look over at what Anthony Joshua said, and Anthony Joshua said they never showed me a bank statement or any money in escrow or anything like that. He said that he doesn't doubt that perhaps the money could have been generated, but at the time that they were making this offer, they didn't show him anything to prove that they had it. And what it seemed to be was a rights deal
To try to buy a fight.
which is basically corroborating what Frank Warren was saying all along. Ladies and gentlemen, none of this stuff is painfully hard to find. You're lucky that you're on this channel so that I've done the legwork for you. The link to those videos are in the description box. But in the case of the Stephen Espinoza versus Eddie Hearn Twitter war, it's very easy to see what's going on here. When a network executive is enthralled in a Twitter beef as if he were some boxing promoter, it's likely because he's in a bad way. And that's what's obvious to me.